The year is 2012, the date, April 12th, and the hottest track of the year, I Can Swing My Sword, had just dropped. And after having my 12-year-old world rocked by on how I could not afford Ford, I get to the end of the video, and I see this promo for Toby Games.
Okay, something tells me this is not a great idea, to be totally honest.
Well, that game looked interesting. Guess I'll give it a play. Sorry, Toby, I never watched your Let's Play. I promise I'll watch it when I get done making the video, though. So, what is Limbo? Limbo's a platformer that came out in 2010. It was made by the studio Playdead, also known for titles such as Inside and... I guess that's it. They should probably get working on another game. I haven't played that many platformers, but of the few I have played, Limbo is definitely my favorite. As far as mechanics go, it's pretty simple. You just run, jump, and grab onto stuff. But it's not just the gameplay of Limbo that draws me into it, it's the style. The entire game is in black and white and has this film grain effect that normally I'd find annoying, but here it works perfectly. So what, the game's in black and white, big deal. Limbo uses it perfectly by making the player and the environment only visible as silhouettes. It creates this eerie atmosphere, and when combined with the usage of ambient noise, it turns it into the video game equivalent of a German expression film such as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The game has a very minimal story to it. You play a nameless boy, and you have to cross Limbo to try and find your sister. Oh yeah, if you don't know what Limbo is, it's the area in between heaven and hell. Like, you weren't a good enough boy to go to heaven, but at the same time you weren't a complete shithead to go to hell. The game starts with you waking up in the middle of the woods before you start your journey. It reminds me of the beginning of Dante's Inferno, where Dante is walking through the woods before he ends up being guided into hell. Is that what the developers were going for? Probably not, I'm just being snobbish. So you set off on your journey through this creepy forest, and very quickly you find out that Limbo is not a good place to be. There's this spike pit you have to avoid right off the bat. The game quickly also has you use mechanics such as pulling items into place to progress, or using ropes to traverse the environment. After dodging death one more time, you hop onto this boat and slowly cross a lake while you take in the ambience of the world. And the mood sets in just perfectly. I love it when games do this. Horror games do this a lot. You get dumped in a strange location and you're just trying to figure out what's going on while the environment is giving you an uneasy feeling. I touched on this topic last year in a video I did on horror games. Should give it a look. Would I consider Limbo a horror game? Kind of. It does have a lot of horror elements to it. I could see how you could call Limbo a horror game, mainly because it does an amazing job of having a creepy atmosphere. Everything is cast in shadow and the world has this fog covering most of the background. Top that off with the eerie soundtrack and the ambience of the environment. This all blends together for a pretty good spooky platformer. Is it scary? No. But I already talked about on how things don't need to be scary in order to be horror in this video here. I will say, this game is a must-play with headphones. The sound design and the atmosphere get a 10 out of 10 from me. You're making progress forward on what lies ahead and... Well, that was gnarly. Yeah, this game has some pretty brutal deaths in it. Especially since you consider that you're playing a child. I love it. That's all I have to say about that. Oh yeah, the developers called the style of gameplay Trial and Death. So on your first run of the game, you're probably gonna die a couple of times if you're not being super observant, or the game will try and make it to where you die because of how a puzzle or obstacle is set up. Take this one for example. You're just walking and... Oh shit, I'm not supposed to step there. Alright, just gonna jump here. Alright, another one. I'll just jump here. God damn it! Okay, figured that out. Oh crap, now I'm being chased. Just, yep. And, yep. Huh, dumbasses. Yeah, you saw that right. There's this Lords of the Flies-esque group of kids out there trying to kill you. And if you don't think that's bad enough, well, let's throw in a giant spider. I don't have arachnophobia or anything, but I'm pretty sure that nobody wants to be chased by a giant spider with hairy-ass legs that impale you. Not to mention that it shows up pretty early in the game. With the game set in Limbo, the world just kind of plays by its own rules. There's giant spiders and insects running around, you have tribes of kids out to get you, and the environment will suddenly change. You'll be running through the woods, and the next thing you know, you'll find yourself running across rooftops before suddenly falling into a watery pit. Scattered across the game are puzzles. Some of them you can solve at a first glance, and others will take a little bit of thinking. But they're not too terrible to figure out, which is great for me because I'm a dipshit. The game does a pretty good job of foreshadowing what's to come. There's these glowing worms that latch onto your head that you'll run into. Before your first encounter with them, you'll come across hints in the environment, such as finding a bunch of them floating dead in a pool of water. Right after this, you then watch them lead someone to their death by making them walk into another thing of water, showing that they can control a person's movements. Immediately following this, you spot these weird creatures in the ceiling snacking on one of these glowworms. So right there, before you even have to deal with them, you're made aware of what they are, what they do, and how to deal with them. To top that off, they show their weakness to sunlight when you spot one dead sitting in a sun ray attached to some unfortunate soul. I like it when games use a show don't tell method of gameplay. And don't worry if you didn't notice that at first, because you'll definitely figure it out when the game makes you deal with these little bastards a couple more times after this. They're easily the most annoying thing you'll have to deal with. The game isn't too long to beat. It should take you about maybe 2 to 3 hours on your first go if you don't know what you're doing. But with a game where you learn from your death, it has a lot of replayability to it. On my most recent run of it, I beat it in a little over an hour. The game doesn't have too many secrets in it. There is a secret level you can take about halfway through the game, and it's pretty tricky. Mainly because most of it is in complete darkness and you'll have to progress through it using only sounds to indicate where you need to jump or grab onto something. Though once you do get the hang of it, you could definitely use it as a shortcut to get through the game quicker on your next Let's Play. I honestly don't have that many complaints with this game. The only complaint I guess I could have is that I find the first half a lot more interesting than the second half. About halfway through, the game switches to a more industrial setting, while I preferred running around in a dark, spooky forest dealing with monsters. But it's not a big complaint, because the puzzles get a lot more interesting in this section of the game, especially when the world starts rotating, or whenever you can start changing the direction gravity pulls you. So your experience should be enjoyable throughout the entire playthrough. At least it is for me, because I've replayed this game countless times. So far I have this many hours in it, and that's just on PC. It's also one of the only 2 games I own on Switch. I wonder how long my other friends have in it. Jesus, Ricky, what the fuck? Even though I already owned the game on Steam, I still bought a physical copy for it on PC just because of how much I love the game. I got this special edition that comes with some promotional art cards, this sticker, and a pair of 3D glasses. Turns out the game has a 3D mode. I played through the whole game in 3D, and really there isn't that much that pops up in the foreground, aside from grass and light particles. It's neat, but definitely not the definitive way to experience the game, no matter what Peter Jackson has to say about 3D. Well, that joke was old. You want to know what else is old? This game. It's 12 years old, and it still holds up, and I'd highly recommend you play it. It's available on most platforms, so getting a copy of it shouldn't be too hard. Well, you go out and you find yourself a copy of it and give it a play. I am gonna go watch Toby play it now.